Hey, what's up? My name's Dave Norris, aka Mixed by Davey. And today I wanted to talk a little bit about mastering limiters. There's a new one by Leapwing called Dyne 1, which I got as a demo. And so I thought I'd A-B a bunch of limiters that I'm using or that I've got, and have a listen to how they sound and how, I guess, they compare to each other. And maybe you guys can give me some feedback. Let me know what you think. All right. So what I've done is I've put them in a rack in Ableton at the bottom. And what's happening is all of these parts, this song's called It's On Me by Sadboy, by the way. Each of these parts or the groups are going out through my Neve Orbit 5057. So it's like a summing mixer, so stereo pairs. And then it's summing down into the VT5, which is the DW Fern EQ. And then it's coming back in over here on the insert on the master bus. So that's, coming in on 1 and 2. And what I've done is I've created a group or an effects rack in Ableton, and each of these is running in parallel. So what happens is basically, if you want, you can set it up with a keystroke. So if you hit Command K, you can see here I've got the A, S, D, F, G as the middle row on the keyboard being keystroke for the mute buttons on these. So if I just hit the letter A or the letter S, obviously you wouldn't want to do 2 at a time because you're going to overload it. But then I can kind of jump between each limiter, and you can hear how they change and the color changes and what you're sort of listening for. Now, I'm using Master Plan. That's like the first and the main one that I use. I think this thing's just incredible. It's running 5 dB on the input. And then I've just tried to level match it with all the rest of them because that one's kind of, for me, the standard. So Master Plan, the new update to Master Plan, this is like a 3-band version. Pro L2. This thing here, again, I'm running at 5.8 dB. So again, it's just about level matching it. And then ultimately you're going to get the same gain. So the Leapwing Limit one, this is running at 6.1 dB. And then I've got the Ozone 11 with the maximizer, which is running at 5.6 dB. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to play for 4 bars of each limiter. There'll be a little gap between each one, so a bit of silence. And I'll try to bring the GUI up before the next one starts playing, so you kind of know what's coming. And then just keep an eye out for these little yellow mute buttons. Whichever one is yellow is whichever one's playing. Okay, so we'll start off with this one, the Master Plan, the original one. So automatically, I mean, you could have seen I was sort of touching up the levels on the fly on some of them, just trying to gain match them because I just noticed some of them were softer than others. What did you guys hear there? Was there anything that stood out in any of those just from the first listen? I personally think, I mean, like I said, the first Master Plan for me sounds the best. For some reason, it kind of ends up being, I don't know, the fullest. So a couple of things to listen. We'll go through it one more time, but before I go through it, what I notice is the top end and the stereo image starts to close in on some of the limiters. They're not as wide and present in the high tops, the brilliance. It sort of feels like there's less of that going on. It sort of brings in the image. So that's the first thing I notice. Also, the second thing is they start breaking up. There's, some limiters handle level better than others. And what will happen is, I guess it'll start to distort. That's probably the first thing you'll notice if you're pushing a limiter too hard. And what's actually happening there. Then when that starts happening, ultimately it starts affecting the frequencies in different ways. The low end starts to get sucked out. All sorts of strange things happen. But the first thing I notice is the width and the top end of the stereo image. if you listen to this master plan, the first version, it sounds amazingly wide and quite sort of bright. So we'll come back to that again. And let's just have one more listen through. This time, just pay attention to those things and see if you pick up on it. Okay, let's go. Yeah. So that, to me, I mean, the first master plan wins hands down for me. It stays really nice and bright and kind of crispy in the top end. The width stays. The image sounds really nice and kind of flat and full all the way down, all the way into the low end. There's no lumps or bumps. That one to me is the clear winner for me anyway. I'd love to hear what you guys think. I've got the Amphions, I've got the full scale ones with the bass 25. So I've got stereo bass, which is kind of amazing. So it's floor to, I guess ceiling or, frequency wise anyway. This having stereo bass is actually quite interesting. And then I've got the Trinov room correction box down there as well. And that thing doesn't just, you guys might have used, you might have used the Trinov as well. If you haven't, it's like the Sonar Works, but it's got 3 mics on the condenser, the room measuring mic. And what it does is it measures the phase as well as the frequency. So it's just dials. It's another level. When you get that and when you hear that, everything hits your head at exactly the same time, as opposed to when you turn it off, or even if you just turn that phase off, everything sounds not as sharp. It doesn't sound, you don't hear the transients as sharply when you're listening. So that in its own right has just changed everything for me. I can really hear when something's getting smeared or when the front of something's getting compressed too much, little things like that. It becomes very apparent. So, it definitely helps to have a good listening environment, good headphones, whatever you guys have got. Ultimately, that's going to be something but just keep that in mind. For me, this original master plan is sick. The new update, they did something when they introduced this, the 3 bands, and there's a weird lump for me in the low mids. It does something weird to the lows and the low mids, which doesn't sound as full anymore. The image still stays, but there's something strange going on in the low mids compared to the original version. So I hope they fix that. I'm not sure what's going on there. Pro L2 sounds great, but it feels like it closes the tops in comparatively. And then I also had to boost it by 1 dB, so it's 6 dBs instead of 5. I don't know if there's a setting on this that I can change that it will change it to. I've tried everything here to get it to sound as open as the master plan. It just doesn't seem to. And if I push it too hard, obviously it starts to fold and lose its image and just sounds a little bit kind of muddy and weird as what happens when you start cranking the limiter. So it's classic. It's amazing. It's good for some stuff. But as soon as I got on the master plan, I'm like, this is a whole nother level. This one sounds cool. It sounds all right. It might not be the best for this style of music. I'd like to try it on some more, I guess dynamic with some acoustic instruments, less kind of smashing. I think it might be better at that kind of thing. It just feels like it wants to break up. And again, I've got this boosted at 6.1 dB to get the same energy or level. So that's always what I'm keeping in mind as well, like the level that I can get to. Normally I will use this. I've got this on my master strapped at the end. And so I can tell, what the actual LUFS are and the level. We're using this little loudness thing. So the adapter, I guess it's called, or ADPTR, this thing is really, like for me, it's quite essential to have. There's a bunch of them, but this one works really well for me. And last but not least is the Ozone 11. Again, like I changed it to the modern setting. I felt like that was the fullest, but it didn't have the same image in the tops still. But it does something nice. It kind of rounds the bass and the low mids in a nice way, a pleasing way. But for me, it still feels like it does something that I don't want it to do. It kind of rolls it off somehow, or I don't know exactly how to explain it, but it doesn't sound as full and meaty. Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to obviously rewind and have a listen again. If you're listening through YouTube, it might not be the best playback, but at the same time, I guess ultimately it's going to give you an idea as to how much a different limiter can change the actual overall vibe of the whole song. So something to be aware of. I mean, if you're mixing into it, then you might account for that in the mixing stage, or even in the mastering stage. But this original master plan just sounds amazing to me. So I'm not sponsored by them, but if they want to hook us up, you know what's up. Anyway, I'm Dave. Big up. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one. Peace.